Welcome to Veteran State of Mind. I'm your host, Geraint Jones. It's been a while. It's been a minute. The reasons for that are numerous. We had episodes cancelled because I got snowed into the house recently. I've had a book come out, which I co-authored with Levison Wood, who's been a guest on the podcast. It's called Escape from Kabul. You can get it now on audiobook, ebook, and hardback in a hardback. That's linked up in the show notes if you want to take a look at it. I've had a lot of work on, to be honest, and as you know, love doing the podcast, but don't pay the bills. But we are going to be back on now regularly, at least for the next few weeks, and then who knows, we might get incredibly busy again. Thank you to all the Patreons who are continuing to support the podcast, especially as we've had a lull. Every quid that you give on the Patreon goes to recording costs. Maybe one day, if we had 100,000 Patreons, some of it might go on holiday for me. But right now, it all goes on recording costs. You can support the podcast for as little as £1 a month. And to those who do, thank you very much. Me love you long time. And on that note, just kind of obviously something like, we were playing with a Patreon kind of way of doing things. And we want to keep the podcast free to people because especially, they just stuck the interest rates up again. Means cost of living is going to get even higher. I know not everyone has a couple of quid to spare a month. I mean, to be honest, you probably do have £1, don't you, really, if you're honest with yourself. But not everyone does. So we want to keep the podcast free because the aim of this podcast, is to inform, is to give you a good time. And we want that to be available to everyone. The ransom bans, though. So being thinking with the ransom bans, you might have noticed on the feed that I've taken down the previous ransom bans episodes. I still haven't figured out how to do it because, to be honest, I just haven't had the time. Like, we're recording this, it's 9:30 in the evening now. But I know a lot of you are hanging out for an episode, so, here we are. We're kind of playing with the idea of, I'm not sure yet how we're going to do it, but I think what we'll do is the ransom bans, maybe it'll be available for free for a short while, and then they'll go behind the paywall. If you want to get the back ones, and by the paywall, I mean, if you contribute to the Patreon, you'll have access to ransom bans. All the rest of the episodes will be available to everyone else. Joe has been incredibly busy as well, so it's just been hard for us to get in and record. But ransom bans will be back, hopefully very soon. And again, we're kind of playing with some ideas. And look, if you've got ideas on this, please do get in the DMs. One of the ideas I'm playing with is that maybe we just do like a month roundup. At the end of the month, we do a longer episode and we go through the stories of the month, kind of dive into them, rather than it kind of being like a bit haphazard and all over the place. Like last night, so with me and Joe were talking tonight about doing an episode, but I've been so busy that I didn't have time. Like I've said before, when we do the ransom bans, I want to back up our opinions with facts and figures, and I just haven't had the time to do the prep for it. So if you have ideas about how we should do it, if you're a Patreon subscriber and, if you want the podcast to be behind a paywall, let us know. If you want it to be available to everyone, let us know. And we'll kind of go from there. We're figuring things out, always trying to learn on the podcast, always trying to make it better. So please do get in touch. Also want to say a massive thank you to Combat Fuel. They've got a new product out at the moment called Optimize. If you think of it as a pre-workout for your day, this will get your head in the right place. Won't send you over the edge of mental. It will just turn you into Stephen Hawking. So check them out at Combat Fuel or social media or combat-fuel.co.uk. Excuse me while I clear my throat. If you use the code VSOM at checkout, you'll get yourself some juicy discount for your juicy gains. And thanks to Zulu Alpha Straps for supporting the podcast. They make great watch straps in a variety of different patterns, hard wearing, rugged. Check them out at Zulu Alpha Straps or ZuluAlphaStraps.com. Again, linked up in the show notes. Really do appreciate you guys supporting these companies because without them, there wouldn't be a podcast, and they've been supporting us for a very long time. All right, let's get into today's episode. Marty Skovlund was a United States Army Ranger, served out in Iraq. He's an author. He's a many-time guest on the podcast. He's a really good friend of mine. Just an absolutely lovely bloke. So without further ado, please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Marty Skovlund. Marty, welcome back to the podcast for your, I don't even know, manyth appearance.
It's been a few times. I think one time we did a pseudo like porn casting type of setup in a hotel room, where I had to come in and ask you for the job, and you said it was a podcast, but oh man, it did not turn out to be a podcast.
Well, you got the job though. I mean, that's what matters. You're back.
You still asked me to come back, so I guess we did all right.
We've had many, mate. Every time, like it seems to be, every time we do a podcast in the States, I end up with a terrible hangover, which is why we're doing transatlantic Zoom ones from now on. Yeah.
Well, the problem is you've met me in person. I know most of the listeners, especially with this being audio, can't tell that I am a bona fide giant. And so I can consume a lot of alcohol. And I imagine the pressure is on you to try to keep up with that. And, it can turn out pretty bad the next day.
I would like to add a gentle giant now that his door kicking days are behind him.
Door kicking days are behind me. Yeah, I traded my rifle for a camera, and lately a camera for a keyboard.
That being said, you do have a bow on your wall behind you, which is rather intimidating.
Yeah, I just, you still want people to get a little bit of that Rambo sort of vibe off of you during, corporate Zoom meetings. So, yeah,
So, mate, but the last time I saw you in person was, I think, in San Antonio, and we were trying to figure it out. I think it was 2018, I seem to think.
Yeah, I want to say it was pre-pandemic. It kind of, like, I think we all kind of, it's like ADBC, right? Like where thing before the pandemic, after the pandemic. But the reason I bring that up is that bar that we went down to, that like speakeasy down in the basement of that restaurant.
Dope. Yeah.
I think that was the last time that I went and had a drink down there, because I don't know, every time I've tried to go back to that restaurant, the Esquire in San Antonio, that has been closed off since the pandemic. I don't know if it's since been open. It's probably been a year since I've been there now, but the last couple of times I tried to go there, it was complete. And as you saw, it's fucking rad down there.
That place was so cool. I mean, then we sat out on the over the what's it called? Those the waterways or whatever. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Like steak there,
canal,
fantastic.
It was
that was
really
the same
good
place, right? We drank in the same place as we had the steak. Yeah, that place was dope.
We had steak and ate out on the balcony there over the canal to start, and then we moved down into the speakeasy with all the fish mounts and jackalope mounts. And I think we polished off all of their stock of whiskey.
I would be really disappointed if that place as close, because that's how I was hoping that was going to be a tourist destination. In 30 years' time, when people are doing Marty Skovlund tours.
I hope it's funny that you bring that up. I think about that every once in a while. I wonder, you're a very prominent author. Logan's doing great things. And, I wonder, in the same way that I recently went to Spain with my wife, and we flew into Madrid, and kind of the theme of our time in Madrid was going around to all the different Hemingway spots that he used to hang out or mentioned in his book. And I kind of wonder if 50, 60, 70, 80 years from now, people might go into San Antonio and, hey, this is the place that Logan Stark and Garrett Jones and Marty Skovlund went and got pissed drunk at, right here at this table. I wonder, maybe that's a little bit too egotistical of me to even ponder that idea, but I wonder.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that we're going to get in the Hemingway category because he has a category all of his own. But I'd like to think we had a few fans that would be interested.
A couple of grandkids.
I mean, put it this way: in 30 years, if we don't have that, then we'll be doing a different job at that point, because
the nature of this business.
Yeah, exactly, mate. So, what can you talk about what you've been working on?
Yeah, well, a couple of different things. The last time we hung out, I was over as the editor of Coffee or Die magazine, and we did some really great things with that. I recently took a job over as I'm now the editor of a different publication called Task and Purpose. It's actually where I got my reporting start years ago. And the first time I went on assignment as a reporter to Afghanistan, it was through Task and Purpose. So I'm back now as the editor-in-chief doing that. And then so I don't know when this will release, but I think we're getting pretty close to the DoD pre-publication review of the book that I'm working on coming back. I know this is definitely a thing that you guys in the UK have to deal with a lot too, which is, if you were in the military, you got to run it by the government if you want to write something about either your time in, or in this case, it's not about me. I'm writing about Senior Chief Petty Officer Shannon Kent, who was killed in Syria in 2019, and she was working at the highest levels of special operations, to the point where our pre-publication review had to go through multiple 3-letter agencies, multiple parts of the DoD and the special operations community just to get clearance. So I think we're going to get that back pretty soon. I hope, fingers crossed, that book comes out maybe sometime around Veterans Day in November, or November, December timeframe is what we hope as a published date. And as you know, that means hopefully it's coming up for pre-sale maybe by summertime, and as you get into the weeds on that. So I'm really excited. I've been working on this book now since she was killed in 2019. I think by summer we started putting together a book proposal of that same year, and I think by January 2020 we had a book deal and I started writing. So it's been a good 3.5 years now that we've been working on this. Me alongside her husband, Joe Kent, who's a retired special operations guy as well. They were kind of a Mr. and Mrs. Smith couple.
Yeah, sounds like it, man. Oh, it's awesome, bro.
Yeah.
We'll have you back on to go through the book after you send me the advanced copy. Nudge, nudge.
the signed advanced copy.
Oh, yes, please. Mate,
because that thing's going to be worth money someday.
Yes, exactly. Well, yes. So, mate, we'll talk about that kind of when it comes out. But one of the things I wanted to kind of just do today for kind of a bit of fun is I've been really enjoying these posts you've been putting up on Instagram, and I'll put Marty's. Actually, before we go into that, so you might find this interesting. So you mentioned the process of getting cleared and stuff there, because I remember it was something we talked about with Matt when we did the BRCC roundtable discussion.
Yep.
I think you guys have a much longer backlog than we do, because we've just done a book about Kabul, and it got done really quickly. And I was wondering, do you think it's just because of, like you mentioned, there was a lot of 3-letter agencies you had to go through. Obviously, that's going to add time because everyone has their own thing. But is there just that there's so many books being written by American veterans that is it just like a case of backlog?
I think that there is a little bit of backlog there, but I think in the case of, I think that you've got a little bit of bias in that all of your friends over here that are authors also come from this soft background, right, where if you were a guy that was in the 82nd, I don't even know that you really have to get your book cleared, frankly, unless you signed an NDA that says you need to have anything that you ever write. That's why Joe and I and Matt did, we have to go get it cleared because we signed an NDA that says if you ever write anything to do with any of this, you're going to have to run it by somebody. But even if, say, you were a guy that did, like you said, you just served in the 82nd 101st and you did sign an NDA, you've only got 1 or 2 units maybe to go through to have them check it and give it the all clear. For a guy like Matt, or in this case, Shannon and Joe, they were involved. Everything they did was joint interagency, blah, blah, blah. Literally there's 15 or 20 different entities that have to go through this book. And I think that the fact that it's been about a year now that they've had it, they say best case scenario about 3 months is what they shoot for. I think a year is it's long for us, but when you consider how many different people have to go through a book and check it for security and all that, I know Matt's took a lot longer, so I'm pleasantly happy that we're getting, I'm pleasantly surprised and happy that we're getting it back at about the 1 year mark.
Mate, if there's ever a case for streamlining government, it's getting books out quicker. I think that is the most compelling argument. I went into it expecting the worst. Yeah.
I've had it, and I've gone through this process once before for one of my other books. But again, that was kind of it. You didn't have to send it around to too many places, at least not comparatively, because it was all about just one unit. And that was relatively easy. This one's a little bit more complicated, but I'm excited. It'll be worth it though. It's 100% worth it. And you'll be able to sleep good at night knowing, hey, these people that Shannon served alongside that are still out there doing the dirty work in the shadows, that you're not putting them at risk or in danger with anything that you may have inadvertently included in the book, so we'll sleep really good at night knowing that it's been cleared. Yeah.
And for anyone interested, the book that me and Marty are talking about by Matt is the Matt Best, Thank You for My Service, right?
Yeah. Sarcastically, thank you for my service. By Matt Best.
So check that out if you're looking for a read to tide you over until Marty's comes out. So mate, like I was saying to you, like I've been really enjoying these posts you've been doing where you've kind of been putting down these, I don't want to say random thought, because there's definitely some considered thought gone into them. And I thought we could go through a few of those. So excuse me for a second while I dive into my screenshots and try and sift through the porn. You're definitely in here somewhere. There's some nice pictures of my cat. Right, where are we? Where are we here? Okay. Sorry, mate. Give me 2 seconds because these are not in order. If I was more prepared, they'd be in order. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start with this one. I've noticed that I tend to subconsciously steer conversations back toward me and my problems lately, even if we're talking about something or someone else. I need to knock that shit off and be a better active listener. The world doesn't revolve around me. Well, tonight it does. So tonight the world does revolve around you. So please, none of that. Right, let's go on. So with that in mind, I think this would be a good place to start. So this is from the other day. Today is the 20th anniversary of the opening salvo shock and awe in Iraq circa 2003. Just a heads up, American service members are still in Iraq to this day. You and I were both in Iraq. Fair to say it shaped our lives in a big way. What were your thoughts recently on this anniversary?
You know, I kind of bounced back and forth between this feels significant that it's been 20 years since the invasion. And to be clear, I wasn't there for the invasion. My first trip to Iraq was summer 2006. So it was a couple of years later. But it feels significant that it's been 20 years since the invasion. But then on the other hand, I kind of have this internal monologue that's like, quit trying to dramatize everything. This is just some number like that we've all decided that means something. But in all reality, what does it actually mean? Does it really mean anything? I don't know. So certainly it's pause for reflection. And I think if you were there during the invasion, probably even more of a pause for reflection because you've got specific memories probably tied to that. You know, my main memory of the invasion was, I was 16 at the time and my family didn't have cable. So we didn't have, the cable news sort of, to watch. So I drove over to Kmart, which is like not even really around anymore. That poor man's Walmart, I guess. And went to the electronics section where it's just a wall of TVs in there, and they were all turned to CNN or something like that. And I watched that March, I think it was March 19th, that opening shock and awe salvo, that air campaign. They had those cameras all over the rooftops of Baghdad, so you really saw the full might of the coalition air power come in. And and then I saw that from thousands of miles away, and as a 16-year-old kid with no other, and I think I wrote an essay about it one time about just like nothing but like red, white, and fuck you going through my veins, you're just full of jingoistic, the most extreme version of jingoistic patriotism at that age, right? Like your country is beating the fuck out of another country that we've all decided they're the bad guys, and you have no nuance or context or anything like that, right? And now obviously, you go forward from there and you see that as a 16-year-old kid, and then a couple of years later, you're in Iraq yourself, you're seeing it for yourself, and it's almost kind of surreal because you always imagined what it might be like to go to Iraq. And for me, Iraq was my first combat deployment. I didn't go to Afghanistan. My first introduction to war was Iraq. And it was a week, 10 days maybe after Zarqawi was killed. So it was like this weird transitional period, especially for American Special Operations Forces. And so you get that. And so you have one view of Iraq during that, right? And then my third deployment to Iraq was when the Status of Forces Agreement got signed in 2009. You saw this other really big transition. You have kind of mixed feelings about that, right? And everything is kind of shifting over to Afghanistan. And then now as a, 36-year-old adult with 2 kids and plenty of time to think about everything all these years later, you have a different set of feelings. I don't know. So you say all that and you're like, so what does 20 years later after the invasion of Iraq mean? Man, I don't really fucking know, but it feels like something. I don't know what that something is. But I do know that, and I have very conflicted feelings about Iraq, and that, dude, it was a fucking awesome job that we had for a while there. Like, I had the time of my life. But then like as a mature adult, you know, that's seen more of the world and has a greater understanding of human nature and all that sort of stuff. You're like, yeah, you had a fucking awesome time as a 19, 20, 22-year-old at the expense of a lot of people, right? We'll just leave it at that, at the expense of a lot of people. So, and for me, I walked away with both legs, both arms, both eyes. You and I both know a lot of guys that didn't, you know? And so I don't know what the right thing to think about it all is or what 20 years means, but it feels like something, and maybe it'll take another 20 years to figure out what that something is.
I would mirror your kind of thoughts on that. Eh? What was the kind of coverage of it like in the States? Was it a big deal in the news?
You know, I think a couple of people put some things out, but you know, we'll put today, you know, we'll put these times that we live in context in case somebody's listening to this podcast a couple of years from now. You know, we've got banks failing. We've got the economy kind of, you know, nobody has any predictability. You know, we've got a lot of things going on to where a 20-year anniversary of this war, it felt like maybe it was like page 2 of the newspaper, if you know what I mean. If anybody read physical papers, this wasn't front page news in America. This was like a little note on page 2 or 3.
Maybe.
That's what it was.
This will make you laugh. So the other day I get a call from my agent, like, all the times I'd like to speak to you about an article about Iraq. I'm like, oh, fucking great. I mean, fucking hell, I'm a media whore. Get me on there. And, but we speak, but I was like, look, man, I didn't really have the most interesting tour in Iraq. I didn't have the most interesting tour in Afghanistan. I've had very normal tours, which I think is sometimes worth speaking about because most people have normal tours, you know?
Yeah.
But I was but I was like, well, let me put you in touch with some guys who had exceptional tours. And then so I did. And I get the newspaper on the Monday. I'm all excited. I thought, got a piece for the scrapbook. I introduced myself out of the column. Didn't make the cut. so I was like, oh, okay. And it was what made it funnier was the guy that was sitting across from me when I was reading the newspaper was one of the guys that I introduced into the article. So shout out to Hugh here. But yeah, it was I think that was about page 8, you know, and it was half a page, you know, 3.
Yeah, that seems about right. That's
half
about
page, 3 guys. So
you made it into print with it though.
Yeah, like so less column space than what chooses the Prince, you know, was Prince, whatever the name was. I don't even follow the royal family too much, mate. Right, while we're on the subject of war then. So this is from, you know, it doesn't matter what day it's from. As long as politicians profit from hysteria and division, prisons profit from mass incarceration, defense companies profit during war, pharmaceutical companies profit during pandemics and chronic illness, food companies profit during famine, banks profit during recessions, then we will never see the end of these atrocities. And hold on, it's not as simple as coming up with new regulations. These are byproducts of a free supply and demand economy, and you don't want to take that way either. These are complex problems with no easy answer. So I think this is one of those ones, kind of like what you're saying about Iraq, where there's just all these conflicting things. Like there's a part of you, it's like, well, right, we need to stop this. You know, we need to stop defense companies making money. And then you're like, well, shit, if we do that, are people going to are they going to invest into new technologies? And, you know, so where did this kind of thought come from?
I think it's, so one, the kind of the examples that I cite there, I don't think that I'm the first person to say that X industry profits from Y atrocity, right? Like many people have said this in many different ways. I think my point was pointing out, like, yes, these are all things that absolutely happen and people 100% profit off of these terrible things. But there's also not some simple solution for it. Like, oh, we should pass a law or we should, you know, don't do that. Like, well, no, it's more complex than that. And here's the thing. Most of the problems that we say, like, how are we still dealing with this? Like these things that I just cite have been going on for hundreds, if not thousands of years, right? In some form or another. You know, before the military industrial complex, it was the kings that profited off of war, right? Like there's always been somebody. And the reason it hasn't been solved yet is because there's not an easy solve for it. If complex problems like this could be solved by Garrett Jones or Marty Skovlund just sitting around over a whiskey cup, pontificating about, this or that, then they would have been solved a long time ago. There's much smarter people than you and me thinking about these issues, but there's not an easy answer to them because you're giving up something. Solving for one problem creates another problem somewhere else. If it weren't for the military industrial complex, guess what? We wouldn't have had some of the advanced technology we had to go to war with. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't have had the war. Like, you think about how many people died in Iraq or Afghanistan. It was some of the lowest amounts of people to die in a war like ever of that scale. And why was that? Because we got helicopters that can come in within minutes of somebody being blown up. We've got medical care. We've got all these advancements now that are a direct result of an industry being formed around war. And so it's just same thing on, with pharmaceuticals, same thing with banking, all this other stuff, right? Like I make more money now than probably my dad ever saw in his life. Why? Because we continue to be more and more advanced in the way we approach finance and the opportunity that's out there, all that different stuff. Like it's not so simple to solve these things. And I think so many people, and as you can see, that took you a good 30 seconds to read that off. It's not a bite-sized hashtag call for action, right? So many of these problems that we have get reduced down to this bite-sized hashtag. Here's a problem. It's an injustice, right? It's not so simple. It's not. And so I think I get exhausted hearing people yell about this or that with no solution or some solution that's completely unfeasible. Particularly politicians are the worst at this, by the way.
So
right?
I think one solution we could try is hang them all. I mean, that hasn't been tried for a while.
A start, right?
But mate, this is like, it's great, like you said, it's great that we had advanced medical kit. It's great that we had, helicopters and things like that. But then the question comes into, do you then go to war to continue that profit cycle? That's kind of where the issue, because all of us want.
Oh yeah,
like all of us.
The solution right now for America for tough economies is another war.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of how it's always been, and this is why this subject depresses me, and why we're going to move swiftly on in a second, is because looking at it, you just like, maybe this is just it for humanity, the same way that we want to fuck and we want to have, like, people want to have kids and we want to have the company of friends and we want to, like, we enjoy sports and we enjoy all these things that just wired into us. There's things that you just can't imagine life without, and unfortunately, I just don't think that it's until people evolve past being people. This is just something that we're stuck with. And, like the medical, the medical pharmaceutical industrial complex, without doubt, influenced what happened over the last couple of years. But then, like recently I was reading about the Victoria Cross winners from Rorke's Drift. Died of this at 40, died of that at 40. And I'm like, so terrible as 3 years of lockdowns and stuff were, better than all my mates dying at 40. Yeah. And so again, it's all these fucking trade-offs all the time. But it just, I guess the worry is that it will go past the point that we're at now and become, and countries become even more reliant on war or even more tied into pharmaceutical complex. And I used to think that the answer to this was, I was thinking, oh, well, if we were just all one country, maybe we wouldn't have this stuff. And now I'm just like, that's a terrible idea. We need it's actually the opposite. The opposite is actually the better. Okay, now this is because there's a few thoughts you had here where I feel like maybe you and me were connecting through the soup, because you hit on something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. Write down your family tree, going back as far as you can, and keep it in a safe place. Your grandkids will appreciate it. Fucking couldn't agree more, mate. Now, what's this come up from? Have you been doing a little bit of the old research, or where did that come from?
Well, what it was is so a little bit of context here. I graduated high school on a Sunday, and I want to say I was at Fort Benning, reporting for basic training on like Tuesday or Wednesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really quick. I didn't pack up my room that I grew up in before I left or anything like that. And what that kind of resulted in, my parents ended up having to move a couple of times while I was in the service. And so my room had been packed up and just kind of shuffled around in boxes over the years. And through that, pictures that I had back when you used a disposable camera and got every set of pictures you ever took printed out, right? And I had all these kind of photo albums and all these things that kind of predated social media, where now all of your photos live on one of the social media platforms, it seems. And so I had all these photos. And so I've been recently I ordered some new photo albums off of Amazon, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to organize all these, put them in a chronological order, things like that. I started going through these photos, man. And I don't know when it happened, but I think at some point I forgot who some of these people were, when some of these were, the order in which certain events happened. I used to be able to tell you this set of pictures, right? I could tell you this happened my freshman year of high school, my sophomore, my junior. I could tell you exactly the order, probably the month, even if not the week. And now I look at it, I'm like, man, was this my junior year or was this my sophomore? Well, I think I look younger in this photo, so maybe it was and I'm looking at this. And then some of the people in there were like, man, I don't remember who this person was. Or, and then you start to think about like, even these photos that I have now, are my great grandkids going to come across these? Like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
And they're going to wonder where they came from. Mm-hmm. And they're going to wonder like where that goes back. I'm only, so my great grandpa and his brother immigrated from Norway into the US back at the, early 20th century. So I don't go back too far in America. And we kind of know where they came. They came from like what used to be a whaling community on the coast of Norway, which is now like it's like a tourist destination. It's like a beach town, I don't think they do as much whaling anymore. But like, that's the extent of what I know where I come from. You give it another couple of generations, they're not even going to know that they came from Norway unless they do like a 23andMe thing. And they certainly aren't going to know that level of detail of like, maybe they came from a whaling community or anything like that. And so I think that where this came from is, I think starting to write down your family tree, going back as far as you can, it's at least leaving some clues behind. Okay. Because I think it's really important to know where you come from. I've heard this from some other people. I don't think this is a unique experience, but I think knowing where you come from is really important, especially if you're in kind of this melting pot that America is. And this applies to many other places as well. But I think it's important because when you go, if you know where to go back to, like where you came from, when you eventually do make that pilgrimage back there, you feel something. Like it's like a spiritual level. Like I get chills right now just talking about it. The first time I went to Norway, like I felt something in my bones. Like, and it felt like there's people that like look like me everywhere I look, that look like they're my relatives everywhere that I look. And Norway's not that big of a country, right? Like most of them probably are my third cousins.
You probably do have relatives there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, and it's something like at a spiritual level that I think gives you a deeper understanding of your humanity and how we're connected and all that sort of stuff. I know for a lot of people that probably grew up in the UK, like a lot of them, it's like, man, their family trees go back probably hundreds, if not thousands of years in the UK, But if you're, think about all the people that got brought over to America on slave trips. Like if you're a Black person in America today, your family tree only goes back maybe 100, 150 years because you can't see past the slave logs, right? Like you don't even, you know that you probably came from Africa, but you don't know what country most of the time, things like that. And I've heard from some folks that have been able to even just go anywhere in Africa that they feel that. It's like they feel it at a spiritual level. And so I think that as travel becomes even easier, as we start to, marry between countries and, the country that you grew up in might not be the country that your kids grow up in, so on and so forth. We're going to continue to the world is going to become more like what I think America is today, which is a big melting pot. And I think that if you're writing down your family tree, you're giving your grandkids, your great grandkids, their grandkids, you're giving them a fighting chance to know a little bit about where they came from. And I think that's important.
No, dude, I totally agree. I was going through some boxes recently. I had a similar experience to you. I went through all my old Afghanistan and Iraq boxes to try and find some stuff to get rid of. And obviously I'm like, keep this. I managed to filter off like half a box of stuff from like 10 boxes. But one of the things I came across in my, I didn't realize it was in there before. There was like a regimental cap badge in there, which had, I thought it had a backing on it, but when I pulled at this backing, what it actually was a dog tag, and it had a name I didn't recognize, and just an initial and a surname and an army number. Mm-hmm. And so I put the army number in. I couldn't find anything, but by using because the army numbers have gone up over the time, so I was able to figure out that it was a First World War cap badge. Mm-hmm. And I did a search online, and I found the only person I could find with a similar kind of name was killed on the Western Front. But I asked my parents. I was like, why is this stuff in with the family cap badges? You know, like, who is that person? I have no fucking idea. Is it a relative? Is it somebody's uncle or like, because obviously we're, you know, at this point, because obviously with it being a man's name, because it's not going to be a woman that was killed on the Western Front, it's going to be a man's name. So that has to really usually be someone, if you know, it's not a Jones or a Thomas, which are unfortunately are ridiculously hard names to research in this country because everyone's called Jones and Thomas and Williams. But so, you know, I'm like, who is this person? I know they were in the First World War, which obviously fascinates me, but I know nothing about them. So I think I think I'm going to have to get a private investigator on the case. A friend of mine just did a First World War tour recently and he was taken to the exact shot that his great uncle was shot. They were able to, from the records, able to take him to the exact spot and things. And I'm sure that was an incredibly moving experience for him. I'll let him tell the story himself. But yeah, I mean, you know, you kind of want to know. And again, it's something you appreciate more as you get older. Unfortunately, by the time you've reached that point, now all my grandparents are gone. Yep. You know,
that's why I feel this sense of urgency right now, because my dad's gone on my dad, and then on my dad's side, his dad is gone. But I've got a couple of my dad's siblings still around, some of his older siblings even, that remember some of these people even more. And I feel this sense of urgency to figure some of this stuff out as soon as I can, because you just, you know, tomorrow's not guaranteed, especially with your older relatives. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. So, you know, if you're able to do that, I mean, I'm going to press my daughter too. My starting point actually on this was a genealogy project I had to do for school in third grade. The best record I have of my extended family is a project that I did for school in third grade that I still happen to have. And that's my starting point, you know?
See, there's a lot to be said to being a hoarder as well. Like keeping that as helped you out. Right. Here's one of your other ones that we can quickly dismiss. Cold lemonade on a hot summer day over a cold beer on a hot summer day. What were you thinking when you wrote this atrocity?
Oh, so my wife makes handmade lemonade. Chills it perfect. I mean, on a hot summer's day, a cold lemonade, handmade lemonade. I mean, it is the only word I could maybe come to describe it as divine. A beer is enjoyable. Okay. A cold beer, especially a good cold beer, is enjoyable. It's good. I enjoy it. I'm never going to turn down a cold beer. But if it's 105 degrees, you're baking on the sidewalk, it's, you know, the humidity is up that day, and you put down a cold, homemade, you know, my wife's lemonade in front of me, and then you offer, like, you know, a Bud Light or something like that right next to it. I'm reaching for that lemonade every time.
All right, you know what, mate? I'll give you that one because the effort's gone into that.
Yeah. Now, if you put a really good beer, you know, like a nice, like, craft beer there, you know, and then it's like some, like, gas station lemonade, you know, out of a plastic bottle, I'm reaching for the beer.
Okay. I'm glad we cleared this up. This was the one that had me worried. What about a nice Lynchburg lemonade? That's a lemonade with whiskey, right? Because my mate used to drink. All I know is they knocked me the fuck out. So I'll take a Lynch.
There's a good.
I'll caveat this by saying Lynchburgs. Go ahead.
When I was, I want to say, a junior in high school, it was the 2004 Olympics. If you remember the 2004 Olympics, Michael Phelps, the swimmer, just absolutely cleaned house, set all these world records, all this sort of stuff. It was a great moment in Olympic history for America, I think. And me and one of my buddies, we got this bright idea that we were going to go over to this friend's house that they were watching the Olympics and their parents were over and all this other stuff. And, but we were going to stop by the gas station first and pick up a lemonade slushie. But we had some vodka, like some really disgusting, like McCormick's vodka, like $10 for a handle of this stuff,
Oh, God.
And we're like, we're going to mix it in here. Like a vodka lemonade slushie is going to be delicious, right? That's how we think in our heads. What we did not know was that if you mix vodka in with a lemonade slushie, all that vodka is going to go straight to the bottom. So we get these and mix these, and we go over to our friend's house and we're sitting in their kitchen. Their parents are there and all that. So it's like a weeknight, right? And we're sitting here sipping on our slushies. We think we're so fucking sly, sneaking booze in. Parents are right there, all that. It tastes fine at first. About an hour into this thing, I couldn't stand up straight without clinging to the wall for my life. And I couldn't see the TV. I'm like, what the fuck happened? It's because I drank through most of the slushie and I got to the bottom. It was all concentrated to the bottom. So I'm sipping just shots and shots of vodka straight, basically, at this point, through a straw. And I remember I had to take a piss, and I was so drunk. This made sense to me at the time that I said, excuse me, I need to use the bathroom. And they nodded towards like they had a bathroom off the kitchen. And I just turned around and walked out the back door. I went and peed in the alley and then came back, and they're all just looking at me like, I think maybe they knew at that point.
Wait, it's what I like as well is that there was no point in your mind where you were like, now I'll stop drinking the slushie. This plan hasn't gone right. You were committed to finishing that slushie.
Because you eased into it. Because you started to get, as you got lower in the slushie, you got a little bit of it. You got a little bit of it. And so you got a little bit drunk. You eased into it, to by the point where you got to the highly concentrated stuff, it just tasted normal at that point.
All right.
It's dangerous. Like,
right. Well, this... That story might undermine this next point, which was very deep. So just everyone know you're taking advice from a lush here.
Yeah.
One of the most frustrating things you can experience in life is the frustration of knowing what could have been, but will never be. This goes against the great movie advice of no regrets. So what have you been regretting?
Well, it's not necessarily a regret, right? Like that statement doesn't necessarily indicate a regret. What will never be, if you think, like in my case, right? Like dad dies. Okay, now my dad will never be able to go pick up the New York Times newspaper and see his son's name on that list. Right. He just never will. It's not a regret. There's nothing to regret. Like, I didn't fucking kill him, right? Like,
got you.
It's the frustration of something that would have been but will never be.
I get you.
Because of some life circumstance. And it's frustrating. There's no frustration like it because it's something that you could never have done anything about. It's just fate, right? You're frustrated with fate and the way life moves and the direction it moves, unrelenting, regardless of what your opinion on the matter is.
Okay,
and that's frustrating sometimes.
As a follow-up to that then, so this is something that you could do something about, because there is, so I get your point there. And then there's the other stuff as well. Like there's certain things, I'm sure everyone that's been in the military has something where they're like, fuck, I wish I took that opportunity. And everyone that's been in a relationship is like, be that like, I'm sure like, a lot of us get to this point now and you're like, fuck, I wish I'd been a better leader. Like, so, and a lot of that, like you said, it fits into what you're saying because now there's such a wealth of knowledge available to our fingertips. Like you've got podcasts like Jocko's podcast where even if that was the only thing you listen to, which I'd hate you for if you don't listen to this one, but if that was the only thing you'd listen to, you'd know so much about leadership. Because you're getting brought these experiences of all these incredible people and having it broken down by an expert, which wasn't available then. So again, it's one of those ones where now you're like, oh, fucking hell, I wish I knew all that back then. But you couldn't know it all back then. That was the kind of the point. But there's
and to be clear, I'm not saying that I don't have any regrets. Of course I do. I think that particular thought was bigger than just regrets.
Gotcha.
So I definitely have my own regrets though.
Well, everybody does. Yeah. Oh, mate, of course. I mean, it's called the 3 a.m. the 3 a.m. regret machine. Like, like that, those things that keep you in bed. Like, even if it was just like, oh, I regret doing this. I mean, fucking hell, I think about times I fucked up. I lay in bed a week thinking about a time I fucked up a handshake and looked like a fucking asshole.
Yep.
And that's your Americans' fault because you're always coming in with different ones. What's wrong with the good old-fashioned, here's 5 of the best, you know?
Because handshakes are a cultural thing. Every culture has their own take on the handshake. And there's so many cultures in America. I fuck it up on a regular basis. There was one time I was at a family gathering where I had like just woken up for a nap and I wasn't quite, the cobwebs hadn't quite been cleared out yet. And I like went in for a hug on somebody that I wasn't supposed to hug. It should have just been a handshake. And I immediately regretted that.
And you were a big ass dude.
I look like the weirdo at the family gathering that just went in for a hug when it was not the person to hug. It was a handshake level of association.
You give good hugs though, mate. I'm going to just put that on the record.
I'm a big man. There's a lot of hug to give.
I love it. It feels like being embraced by someone. I love it. All right, here we go. Goal setting is important. I keep a running bucket list that I regularly up. All right, I'll start this one again. Goal setting is important. I keep a running bucket list that I regularly update. It has 3 categories: see, do, and learn. Tell me more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I'll go through some of them just as an example here. Because like I said, I keep this literally on my phone, and then I have a separate Google Doc that, I mean, I'm very serious about this. I'm a firm believer that you're not going to get to the places you want to go unless you have a compass, right? You have to have an azimuth, right? So we got the goals folder, we got bucket list. All right, so we got things like, and this is under C, right? Step foot on all 7 continents, swim in all 5 major oceans, go to all 50 states. I got a list of things that I want to kill, like hunting wise, right?
Okay.
I got a list of fish that I want to catch. We got things in here like learn a second language. There's some things that maybe you don't have control over, like father or daughter, father or son. I got the daughter down 2 times over, but don't have a son yet. I've got things on here like I want to visit every national park in the U.S. I've got some of the things that I've done that were on my bucket list, get published, right? Go to Norway for the reasons we talked about earlier. Jump out of an airplane, right? Have a beer with a complete stranger. Summit a 14,000 foot mountain. A recent one that I checked off was visit the Auschwitz concentration camp. I went over to Ukraine right after the invasion, like a week or 2 after the invasion last year. And on our way back out, coming through Poland, we just happened to be in the area. And it was like, I knew this was like a bucket list thing. So we stayed an extra day to go visit that. And, so that was probably one of the more recent ones that I've checked off on my bucket list. So a lot of see, I'll learn, a lot of do. I do, like I said, hike a 14,000 foot plus mountain, learn a second language. Like, I think by breaking it up into categories like that, it doesn't just become a tourist checklist, which I think a lot of bucket lists tend to be, is just, I want to go to this country and see this monument, or, see the Eiffel Tower, go to, like, I don't want it to just be that. I want it to be these things that by having them as goals, they're going to make me a more well-rounded person, a more interesting person. Somebody that, like, when I'm hopefully laying on my deathbed a long time from now, I look back and say, man, I really did a lot of cool shit, And I think already, if I were to fucking kick the bucket tomorrow, I lived a pretty fucking good life. I've been a lot of places, done a lot of things. I don't have anything for a 36-year-old. I've done all right, but I want at 70, 80, 90, however old I end up being, hopefully, I want to hopefully get to that point, especially get to that point where you're kind of like immobile for the most part, because of just you stuck around so long, you can't move too well anymore. I don't want there to be all these things. You're like, man, I wish I would have done this and that, but didn't, So I think having this list, having goals in front of you, like, you're not going to accomplish shit that you don't admit out loud that you want to accomplish them.
Yeah. No,
right.
I love the way you're breaking it down as something I'm going to pick up off you, because I've got similar, because like travel ones is one of the ones that's really easy to bucket list, and I've got one that's kind of like I try and tie in some, like, I want to be able to go on a vacation and not use English. Yeah, it's something like, so that's kind of like how I've kind of been trying to tie other things into it rather than just turn up a place and look at stuff. Mate, it wouldn't be a Marty and Geraint podcast if we didn't do some book shit. So let's do this one. Readers are leaders. Explain.
Mm-hmm. I regretted that one as soon as I published it. Because as I thought about it more, I think it's the other way around. I think leaders are readers, that all good leaders read. Not all readers are leaders, right? Like I regret the order that I put that in. I don't think everybody that is an avid reader is also a leader. I think a lot of avid readers are actually introverts that couldn't lead their way out of a box, right? But I think that all good leaders are readers. I think all good leaders are constantly learning, are constantly trying to evolve, and and make consuming books a big part of that. For some, I know a lot of leaders, especially leaders in business and that sort of thing, very busy schedules. They listen to their books. They don't necessarily. I think that still counts. But I think that really what the essence of that is, all leaders are constantly learning, right? They never quit learning. They never quit evolving. They never quit expanding their worldview. And I think one of the biggest ways that we do that is through books. And I look over the computer screen here at my shelf, and the amount of books that I've picked up now at this point, I've read 15% of them. And that's actually a really decent amount of books. Yeah. But there's so many that I want to get to, there's so much from the classics to more modern books that have come out. There's so much to get to, so much to consume. And I think that, again, that's the one that I wish I could get back just so I could rearrange it. I think leaders are readers.
Yeah, I like that, mate. I really, really kind of love this one too. The first sentence of a book and the first frame of a film are so important. Study them and challenge yourself to be great when writing or filming your next project. What is your favorite opening line from a book and from a movie or TV show?
For a book, I couldn't recite to you what my favorite is off the top of my head, just because for me, many times I read, and I remember the whole story, but when I read that, I'm like, man, that was a banger of an opening paragraph or an opening sentence. But I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what is my favorite. And there's some that I really liked the opening sentence, but didn't like the book overall, or didn't like the article overall. So that one I think really depends. Opening frame though. Man, I feel like there's a couple of Tarantino films that I've that opening sequence, that opening shot has been really amazing. Again, I'd have a hard time. It's something I really appreciate, but I don't know that I've got a running list in my head of like what my favorites are, but I really appreciate it. But what I'll tell you and where that really came from, I personally focus so much on every video I've ever done. I focus so much on what that opening shot is, that establishing opening shot that sets the tone for the rest of the story. And same thing with every article I've written, every book that I've done, that first sentence, like with this Shannon Kent book, the first sentence, I really spent a lot of time on it because I wanted it to hit really hard, and that first sentence is, hunting humans, like most trades, is a craft mastered through repetition and experience, period. The whole first paragraph is, hunting humans, like most trades, is a craft mastered through repetition and experience. Many in the world of special operations spent the better part of the past 2 decades devoted to refining it, but very few transcend from craftsmen to true artisans. Like many great artists in the past, most of their names will not be known during their lifetimes.
And mate, what I love about that is you've set up the theme and you've set up the stakes instantly.
You know exactly what you're getting into.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
right?
I love it, mate. Like, top marks. Give you an A+ for that, mate.
I spent a lot of time on that. The last 3 years I've been working on this book, 2 of those years was that first sentence.
Mate, it's fucking important. I did give some thought to this earlier, and I think for me, I'm the same position. I can't tell you what they are, but I can tell you that Philip Kerr, who writes like kind of noir crime books, awesome author, one of my favorite authors, unfortunately no longer with us. His opening sentences and paragraphs always get me. I would say for a film, one of them, something jumped to mind straight away. There was 2. And then one of these is going to be a great segue. But the first one is, and this is my favorite, is Oliver Stone's Platoon with the new guys, the kind of the misty new guys, and the guy so this is kind of not just the frame, but the kind of just that opening moment of these Cherries new guys coming off the back of this Hercules. Oh my God. And especially for anyone that hits you differently once you've been on a deployment too.
Yep.
Because you can smell it.
You can smell those. Yeah.
Yeah. So that I think was masterful. And also the Top Gun opening. Right. The Top Gun openings. They are oh man. And that ties us into very professionally. We ended up watching Top Gun Maverick for a family movie night last night. Fighter jets are so freaking cool. Bro, those first few minutes of both of them, and I love that they paid homage to the first one, and they did the new one, but this time it was F-18s, not Tomcats. And let's be honest, F-18s, they ain't as sexy as a Tomcat. Tomcats are beyond sexy. But that first 3 minutes, and this is where the US military are so kind of clever by backing films like that. That is the best recruitment tool you can ever have.
Yep.
End of.
That original Top Gun, that inspired an entire generation of fighter pilots. You ask any fighter pilot that came from the mid 90s all the way through probably the mid aughts, they'll tell you it was Top Gun. That's why they wanted to become a fighter pilot. Maybe they would have ended up in the military either way, but the reason they ended up a fighter pilot was because of Top Gun.
Yeah, I mean,
it very, very clever on that front. And yeah, and on that one note, for folks that say, we watched that with my 8-year-old daughter. She hasn't seen the original Top Gun yet. We ended up going with the most recent Top Gun because it was actually the most recent Top Gun is actually a little bit more family friendly than the original one is.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The original one has a few more kind of steamy scenes in it, and so we said, let's do the more recent one. And then we'll maybe get to the original one in give her another couple years, and then we'll come back to that original and then maybe rewatch the second one again. But dude, they did a fantastic job with that film. And you watch it, I watched it in the theater too. When you get that audio, the sound design on that, to where you've been next to a flight line before, right? Where those fighter jets are taking off, and you just feel it in your chest. And you kind of got a little taste of that in the theater because they really amped up the roar of those engines. And some of those shots where they have them coming in real low over the ground. I remember specifically one time in Afghanistan where we had to have some fighter jets come in and do a show of force just to kind of keep people back a little bit. And they came in, it must have been only 100 meters off the ground. I don't know. I remember feeling like I could reach up and touch them though. And it's just, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like that. That's just that sheer, holy fuck, I wouldn't want to mess, glad they're on my team.
Mate, most of my favorite memories of tours involve fast jets. Just because there's just, there's just something
right? They're so cool.
They're so fucking cool.
Yeah.
Have you watched Devotion? About the pilots on the Korea War pilots?
No, I have not.
I recommend it, sir. It's about the first black naval aviator. And I've got to be honest, there was a part of me that was a bit worried about watching it in the current climate because I thought, I really hope they don't just make this a race movie because it's based on the true story of the first black naval aviator, which obviously is an incredible story. And obviously, without doubt, suffered racism and had to go through everything like that. But it's the true story is it ends up with his wingman winning the Medal of Honor. And to me, it's like one of the best stories of brotherhood out there. And just the fact that race and everything is transcended in the military. And
I'm always really interested in those movies. And my buddy Jericho is currently trying to push a movie through development right now about the first a company of Black Rangers in World War Korea. Sorry, in Korea. And when you talk about movies that are based on like a first black something, right, or something like that, like the race sort of based movies, they're always the ones that happen during Korea or World War II or World War I or back. Those are all really interesting to me because those were pre-civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. Those were all any bit of what they were accomplishing was directly in the face of literal systemic racism, like literally part of the system, like where you guys can't be a part of the same unit as everybody else. You have to go be your own thing. and we're not going to give you the good stuff to work with. You're not going to get much for rations, nothing like they had to be exceptional and heroic and contribute to a war effort in the face of literal systemic racism, like written into law, Jim Crow laws, things like that, right? Like, that's insane. That's crazy.
While serving your country.
It's so compelling.
Yeah.
Those just absolute patriots who are like, we're going to go kick some fucking ass on whatever continent you send us to, even though we can't drink out of the same fucking water fountain back home.
Yeah.
That is true patriotism.
What I loved about this film too was that, because like there's a part of me that's thinking, because I knew the true story, because I'd read the true story before, and I thought, I really hope, because what happened in real life was him and his wingman were cool from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I really hope that they don't make it that they weren't cool in order to make a character arc, and then at the end they become cool. So I really I thought they got the balance really well, and I was blown away by the aerial scenes. Corsairs taking off on they don't have quite the same oomph, obviously, as a fighter pilot, but like a fast jet. But it was a really good film. I highly recommend that to anyone. It's called Devotion. All right.
That's interesting that I want to pause there real quick, though, because that's interesting you bring that up of your, like, hey, I hope they don't do this with the character arc. Do you find that frustrating as somebody you're a professional storyteller, so you understand how stories are structured, you understand character arcs, story arcs, plot points, all the mechanics of telling a story, right? So do you ever find when you see a movie's coming out or books coming out and you're familiar with the source material, you're already analyzing how they'll probably put it together because you understand the mechanics of how these things are put together. And sometimes when you're watching something, you almost can predict what's going to happen next because you understand in the same way that a car, when this happens here, this happens there. You almost understand. Do you find that frustrating sometimes that you don't get to just purely enjoy story for what it is?
Kind of, bro. So there's one of the things, like, I to kind of test myself, there's something will happen and I'll go, right, I think if I hit pause right now, this is going to be the midpoint. Or if I hit pause right now, I know that this is going to be 2/3 of the way through the film. And I do that to kind of test myself. What the thing that pisses me off is, right, we've got a detective. Okay, we need to have the save the cat moment. We need to build some empathy for this detective. Give her a dead kid. Give her an autistic kid. Give her a divorce and an autistic kid, and also she's got autism. It's like, it just, no, you just don't need that. Like, by all means, have like those things if it's conducive to the plot. But don't just throw dead kids at me to try and make me have sympathy for a character. That stuff pisses me off. Like, I just
when you reach for the same plot device over and over again in every single movie or every single book, it's like, holy shit. I understand you need to do this. I understand you need something to propel this story forward, but reach for something different in the toolkit, you know?
Yeah. Right, mate. So last one, because you mentioned you went to Ukraine, and obviously, this is not the first time you've put yourself somewhere. You could write stories without going to the front. The trouble is they wouldn't be very good stories. By that quote is from Ward Just. I mean, this is kind of this is the way that you've been living your life.
Ethos.
Yeah, your ethos. Yeah. So... I would like to, I just wanted to kind of expand on this for people, because one of the things I get sometimes, I'm sure you're the same way, you get DMs from people, someone young at once, I want to write a book, what's your advice? Well, what have you done? And I don't mean what are your accomplishments, I just mean, have you been places? Have you talked to people? I don't want to read the book by someone that's never left the bedroom, unless the book is about never leaving your bedroom, in which case you're qualified to write it. But you can't be, I write about Roman legions. I've never been in Roman legion, but you can make yourself cold and wet, and you don't have to be in the military to do this. You can deprive yourself of sleep. And I do think this is why a lot of times people's best work comes when they're in, like Stephen Pressfield. He's putting out great stuff now, and he's got a book out, Government Cheese. I'll put all these books, by the way, down in the show notes, because we've mentioned a few books here. And it's been really interesting reading about like his experiences of, how do you get to that point where you can write great stuff? Well, you have to fucking live. So I would just wanted to expand on that one. Is that kind of how you see it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really uninterested in writing stories from behind my desk most of the time. I think that when you look at the stories that I've written, like the big features that I've done, with maybe one or two exceptions, almost all of them were me going on assignment to a place and me doing what I think is an actual reporter's job, which is to just go out and report what you see right in front of you. And a lot of times, if you're going to places that are important, even reporting the mundane seems significant, right? You don't need to be a great writer if you're going to places that, significant world events are happening, and there's stories that I've been able to record, moments that I've been able to record that I never would have known about them if I wasn't there. One thing that comes to mind specifically from Ukraine was waking up one morning and going through, the place that we were staying was not too far out of the city center, and going over, and they had, all these baby carriages lined up, 109 of them. And they were to represent all the infants that had been killed thus far. And like I said, there's only a week or two, and I'm sure you couldn't fit the baby carriages in that square anymore at this point. But at that point, it was like, and we wrote a little dispatch based off of that. There was another moment on that same trip where Russia had sent a bunch of cruise missiles toward this base. I forget the name of the base now, but it was just on the other side of the Polish border. I mean, you could throw a rock and you're in Article 5 violation, right? But it was the place where America had been previously training Ukrainians at that base. Obviously, the Americans had since left at that point, but they hit this base, killed a bunch of people. And so we're there. All these Ukrainian soldiers are carrying these caskets into the church for their final service. And you've got the widows and the mothers and everything there, just tears streaming down their face. These dads and brothers doing their best to keep a stoic face. It's just a really moving moment, right? And they're carrying these caskets draped in the Ukrainian flag into the church. And right at that moment, the air raid sirens start going off. And you just see these people, right? Only a week or two into this war, and nobody changes what they're doing. Nobody moves a muscle. Nobody moves for the bunkers or anything like that. They just let these air raid sirens go for probably 2, 3, maybe 4 minutes. And they keep carrying these caskets in. The tears keep coming down. And it hits hard because that these guys that you're carrying in these caskets right now, the last thing they heard was an air raid siren. Mm-hmm. They didn't get killed by gunshot, or they got killed by these cruise missiles that the air raid sirens were going off, and they got fucking wiped out. Like to be in that situation where loved ones are having to bury their dead and be literally at risk of dying by the same method. That's not something that any of our family members had to deal with. I didn't have to worry about my family, running into an IED on their way to, if I would have been killed. Right. Like we didn't have to deal with that. And so that moment sticks out to me as something that I could have written until I was blue in the face about the Russian invasion of Ukraine from the safety of my own home here in New Hampshire in the United States. I would have never known that detail. I would have never been able to envision that scene. I would never been able to bring that level of humanity to what I was writing about. That's one example, right? Like that's just one example. And I think we can point to a lot of war reporters and conflict reporters where their literal sentences and paragraphs are not significant. It's what they're seeing with their eyes that's significant. All they have to do is just write it down because they're right there. They don't need to be fucking Hemingway. They don't need to be Shakespeare. They just have to write it down on the paper in their notepad, and that's enough. And now you're a great writer, if you're in those situations. And so for these folks who they don't want to leave their cocoon of safety. And like I said, we're talking about conflict reporting and that thing, but I think the same is even true. If you're a political reporter and you're not in DC, if you're not getting on the politicians' tour bus as they go and politic all around their district or their state or their country, you need to be where the action is, whether that's politics, whether that's the pandemic, whether that's war, whether that's no matter what it is, you have to get the fuck out of your house. And if you're writing books, yeah, the same applies, whether you're a news reporter, a book author, a magazine writer, any of those things apply. Like you have to go where your subjects are, and even like you said, writing about history, Roman legions and things like that. I mean, I imagine you've probably been to Italy before, Yep. Like you've been to some of these, like you can picture where these guys called home, and that gives you a connection to your subjects that you just, without that, a good example of this, and I won't call it who the writer was, but a good example of what happens when you don't do this. Okay. I was recently sent a draft of a chapter by somebody very close to me, and they were writing about their subject going to a certain part of the world and everything. And the story itself was good. Like they have very good story writing chops, right? But me, as somebody who'd been to this particular part of the world before and was also very well traveled, they were putting things in there that gave them away as they never left their house to write this story, you know? And it takes you out of the story then. It takes something away from it. And I'm rambling at this point.
But mate, I think something I'll just say as well, like on your say is get inventive. So like, let's use the Roman legions for an example. Look, you and I were very fortunate in a lot of sense, and I agree with what you said earlier. Our fortune came at other people's expenses, but you know, we got to experience combat, not Roman legion combat, but we knew what it was like to have your life in fear.
War hasn't changed that much.
But no, get in a fucking boxing ring with someone. Go to boxing, stand toe to toe with someone. You want to know what it's like to stand in a shield war or ever get in a fight. And the reason I say boxing here, like, I would say our generation was the generation where you could have fights and you're not going to have life-changing circumstances. Now you could throw your life away and end up in prison. But if you want to write about combat, if you want to write about that kind of thing, if you want to know what it's like to experience fear, then go out and go and do some kind of combat. So like, you don't have to even do it much. Just go and try. Like, there's ways of finding these experiences. Because I read some books sometime. I'm like, this guy's never been punched in the fucking face. And like, one of the things you're talking about, things I hate in films, fucking prolonged fight scenes where the guy's getting slugged this way and that way and then you have to have a bit of artistic license, obviously. But I'm like, this bloke's clearly like, there's all this clarity going on in the fight, and it's like, that's not how a fight works. You don't know what the fuck is going on.
That's why one of my favorite movies, probably of all time, as far as the fight scenes go, is Atomic Blonde. Have you ever watched that?
I have not, mate.
I highly recommend it. It's like a spy movie, female protagonist in like Eastern Germany back in the Cold War, all this sort of stuff. It's really grungy, but man, the fight scenes, they beat the fuck out of her. Like, she's getting tossed around. She can't walk straight. She can't see straight. Like, she's all bruised up and bloody, and fucking her hand hurts and is swollen up. And like, it's like, oh, this is like the person who choreographed this has been in a fight before. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it wasn't this like really pretty, just like, you know, like you're in the boxing ring, just trading jabs. It's like, no, they're going to the ground and they're choking each other out and they're grabbing a fucking toaster and bashing the head in, and you're grabbing everything because you're fighting for your life. You know, fighting for your life looks a lot different than a nice, clean in the boxing ring, you know? But I think if you get in the boxing ring, you get a little bit of a taste of what it is like to fight for your life, because all of a sudden you're real concerned about getting your fucking lights knocked out.
Yeah, well, you'll feel,
you know, so it gives you just enough of a taste as a writer.
Yeah. Mate, I could keep fucking talking all night, but we've got to let Peter, the producer, go home. So, because it's a late one here. Mate, where can everyone see you writing? Where can they find you?
So right now I'm the editor at Task and Purpose. You can go to taskandpurpose.com. I'll be completely honest with you. I do a lot more editing than I do writing these days. So that's one of those things. But I think that the most consistent writing that I do, as far as the public can see, is probably on my Instagram with those daily thoughts. And so I'm not going to dare try to spell out my name, which is my Instagram handle.
Well,
you can link that in the show notes.
We'll put it in the show notes. And I got to say, mate, I wish every guest would have something where we have all these jumping off points for notes, because this was, I mean, we just had a book come out last week. Me and my friend Levison Wood just put a book out, and the last week has just been non-fucking stop. So it's great to have. I'm like, oh, you know, I think Marty's done the podcast prep for me. This is fucking great. Bro, thank you so much for going on today, mate. I miss you. I'm going to shoot you some dates that I'm in the States soon. Hopefully we can cross paths at some point and have some more whiskey, maybe some lemonade.
And I need to make it across the Atlantic, and I need to go see Garen's. You know, I need to see where you're running around at. You know, I need to go to your local pub.
Prepared to be disappointed. But, mate, yeah, we'll figure it out. Mate, we had Will Ferrell in this town the other week. Now it's, you know, we attracted, Ryan Reynolds bought the local football club. So, we, you know. No kidding. We're an A-list town now, mate. So you're very, you know, you'll be in good company, bro.
Yeah. But by the way, so I'm not going to prolong this too much, Peter. I empathize with you. I recently have gone down a rabbit hole of travel channels on YouTube. Okay. All the best ones are from people from the UK, by the way.
Right.
It's something about that accent that just delivers. Like these travel reviews, there's a couple of them now. Like I need to get over there and I got to see what's in the tea over there that's making this magic happen.
Well, we'll take you to some Viking places, mate, where your ancestors probably looted before they got into whaling. But bro, so good to see you. All the best to your family, mate. All the best to your brother, and I'll catch you next time. And listeners, we'll catch you next time. We love you. Bye.